I found the hidden app on my husband's phone at 2 a.m., my eyes bloodshot from scrolling through his chat history. It was labeled safe and password protected, but I'd been waiting for this. We'd been fighting for weeks about the baby, the bills, the way his work emails lingered on the kitchen counter like evidence. When I finally cracked the code, my breath hitched. A folder of photos. Him at a bistro, a woman's hand resting on his forearm. A park, her hair brushing his shoulder. A hotel rooftop, her laughing into his chest. My phone slipped onto the rug. He arrived home at 6:47 a.m., still in his work slacks, the smell of coffee and something citrusy clinging to him. I waited until he passed the hallway mirror, his reflection caught mid-sigh, the way he always did when he thought I wasn't looking, before I said, "Your phone's got a new password." He froze, his fingers tightening around a travel mug. "You found it," he murmured, not to me, but to the floor. I showed him the app, the photos, the chat. "Who's this?" My voice was smaller than I'd intended. He didn't lie at first. "A friend." His forehead furrowed like the word tasted sour. "We're not just talking." I pressed for names, for details, and he turned cold. "It's nothing, Alina. She's a cousin from out of town. You know how families are." His shirt was damp under the armpits, his hands so still they looked plastic. I let him go, but at the grocery store that afternoon, I noticed the $500 charge on his credit card. East Side Fertility Clinic. I'd never mentioned infertility, not once. My body's clock ticked louder than my mouth. That night, I opened the clinic's website on my laptop. Their logo glowed in the dark, a heart split into two. The cost of one cycle, $15,000. I stared at the charge, the photos on my phone, and felt the room tilt. Was this his secret? My secret? Or a mirror we'd both been staring into for years without seeing ourselves? The next morning, I stood in my sister's kitchen, my hands shaking around a mug of lukewarm tea. She'd answered the door in a bathrobe, hair frizzy, her eyes narrowing as she saw me. "Alina?" Her voice was a knife. "What do you want?" I showed her the photo from the app. Her laughing in the clinic's waiting room with Ethan, her arms slung around his shoulders. She paled. That's my old high school friend, okay? He helped me move last year. Is this about Dad's will?" Her words came too fast. I waited. When she didn't explain, I left. Ethan met me at the office. He didn't deny it. "I never meant to hurt you," he said, pacing like he always did when he was lying. "I found your IVF files online. The clinic sent a confirmation email to your old email, which I still have access to, and I thought, if I could just show you that you're not alone, that we can fix this." His voice cracked. "You never let me in, not after the miscarriage. I didn't know how else to help." I wanted to scream, to throw something, to demand why he'd used my sister, why he'd let me believe the worst. But when I saw his face, his eyes red-rimmed, his hands trembling like he'd swallowed a lifetime of secrets, I saw myself. The way I'd canceled our anniversary dinners to avoid talking about why we couldn't have kids. The way I'd snapped at him for forgetting to take out the trash when my hormones were wrecking me. That night, we sat on the floor of our living room. The adoption papers we'd filled out months ago spread between us. "I'm sorry," we said at the same time. He reached for my hand and I let him. We didn't fix everything. Not that night. But I stopped pretending I didn't love him, and he stopped pretending he knew how to fix me. The real affair, I realized, wasn't with my sister. It wasn't even with the clinic or the app or the lies. It was with the silence we'd buried in the cracks of our marriage, the way we'd both chosen to look away instead of asking, "Are you still there?" Sometimes the hardest part of love isn't holding on. It's learning to let the other person hold you back, The silence between us stretched for miles that night. I stared at the adoption papers, my fingers tracing the edges where I'd folded them after he left for work the morning after the miscarriage. I'd been so busy resenting him for not holding my hand through it, for not getting how I needed to grieve alone, that I never noticed the way he'd stopped talking about kids altogether, how he'd canceled our appointments, how he'd left the ultrasound photos in the trash. He told me about the app, how he'd created it the day I started IVF, trying to track progress I'd never let him in on. I thought if I built a secret world, he whispered, maybe I'd feel like I was still part of ours. I wanted to hate him for it. But the truth was, I'd built my own secrets. The way I'd hidden the positive test results, terrified of his reaction. The way I'd yelled at him for treating me like a project, when all I wanted was for him to hold me and say, "I'm here." In the weeks that followed, we didn't fix everything. We're not that kind of people. But we started again, with coffee dates where we talked about the weather and the dog's bad breath, with him admitting he still doesn't know how to ask if I'm okay, and me learning to say, "No, not okay, but I'm trying." The real affair wasn't with my sister, or the clinic, or even the silence. It was with the way we'd both convinced ourselves we were too broken to be fixed. Last week, I found a new app on his phone. No label this time, just a photo of us at the adoption agency, our hands clasped around a picture of a little girl with a gap-toothed grin. Underneath, he'd written, "This time, we'll say yes out loud." And I believe him, not because we're perfect, but because we finally stopped pretending we were alone in the mess. The adoption social worker slid a photo across the table. A boy, 4 years old, with a lopsided grin. My chest tightened. He's been asking for a mom who laughs, not just one who tries, she said. I glanced at him. His eyes were glistening, but I couldn't look at the picture. Not yet. Not until I'd stopped seeing the faint positive lines in my bathroom trash, the way I'd flushed them down the toilet like they were confetti for a funeral I couldn't attend. That night, he found me in the kitchen, staring at the app. "What if we need more than one yes?" I asked, my voice fraying. "What if we need 100? He didn't answer. Instead, he opened his laptop, a document labeled Fertility Clinic Donations, 2023. I froze. He'd been funding treatments anonymous for years. "I didn't think you'd want me to push," he whispered. My hands shook. How many times had I judged him for secrets I didn't understand? The twist came 2 weeks later. At the clinic, they handed me a folder, a referral for genetic counseling. His donations included a request for a donor with a history of miscarriage, the nurse said. My breath hitched. He'd known about my losses, all of them. I'd buried that part of me, the hollow months after the hidden tests, the way I'd whispered, "Not yet," to the void. But he'd carried it for us both, building bridges in silence. Now we're sitting side by side, him holding my hand, me clutching the adoption photo. The social worker says he's waiting in room 3. I nod, but my eyes lock on his. No more secrets, just the raw, aching hope of 2 broken people stitching themselves into a whole. And when the door opens, it's not a child we see, but a mirror, our own reflection, finally clear.